And for more, let's turn to Wisconsin Democratic Congressman Mark Pocan. He's the chair emeritus of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. And for our purposes, thankfully, he's also on the Appropriations Committee. So, Congressman, what's going to happen here? You guys going to fund the government?
Well, first, thanks for having me, Garrett. We will. I think there's going to be an extension probably to mid-January to give us a little more time. Look, anytime you have a 50-50 Senate, less than a handful of vote margin in the House, you know, it's like juggling cats on a high wire with a fire underneath you and headwinds blowing against you, right? Wow. Nothing is easy to do in Congress these days. And this is something where we're just going to need a little more time while we're finishing Build Back Better Up and dealing with some of these other deadlines. But, you know, I think there's the will to get it done. If we wish the Republicans would be maybe a little more cooperative in helping us get some of these things done, because things like the debt ceiling, et cetera, should be a no-brainer. If we've already committed to the expense, we should commit to paying that expense. But it could be delayed into mid-January.
Speaking of delayed into mid-January, the Senate's now about to get their hands on the Build Back Better bill. Joe Manchin's been saying to anybody who will listen, he doesn't even want to deal with this until next year. But let's say that they do get started on it in the not-too-distant future. Do you think it's realistic to expect that bill back in your chamber before the end of the year? And is there anything that Joe Manchin could do to that bill? Is there any changes that could be made in the Senate that would be red lines for you? You would say, this is not for me anymore?
Yeah, I think if the Senate can get it done, we'll meet in the House no matter what day it is. I was going to say maybe not Christmas, but maybe even including Christmas, because this bill is so important for the American people. So if the Senate can get it done, we'll get it done through the House. There's no question. As far as lines in the sand, we've tried not to say that. Remember, when the Progressive Caucus kind of held out voting on the infrastructure bill for a little bit, that really started a lot of the negotiations. So much of the bill, I would say over 95%, is already pre-cleared. There's a few items yet that we don't have total clearance with the Senate on, and some of those things could be at risk. But otherwise, you know, I think we're in a pretty good place on most of these measures. And, you know, at the end of the day, when that bill passes, and the average family making $100,000 a year and have a kid in child care, they're going to see about $8,500 savings just in their child care, plus the child tax credit will add another $3,600 for that child. That's almost $1,000 a month. That's a real difference in people's lives, and that's what's in the Build Back Better bill, and that's why it's so important.
I'm curious, I mean, when you look at this bill, it is a long list of provisions, which I know is a huge positive for you, but also can be kind of a negative, I think, in selling it, right? It's not the bill that does X, it's the bill that does X, Y, Z, A, B, C, and so on. When you're back in Wisconsin, when you're back talking to your constituents, what do people come up and say to you, this is the thing I need the most or want the most in this bill? Or what are you finding is this, if you had to pick one provision that's the most resonant thing with your voters?
Yeah, Gary, you're exactly right. I mean, this is going to require all of us going around our districts and the president going around the country talking about the measures that are in here, because there's so much that's going to benefit so many. I think what I just mentioned, that child care provision, is huge, right? Not just because it helps women enter the workforce, because all the work we did around COVID, 6 of the 7 jobs went to men, not women. So this really helps to change that. But also, it's just something that's so needed to get people back into the workforce, period. We were told by our business associations in Wisconsin, the #1 thing holding people back from taking jobs was the issue of childcare. So there's a lot of good stuff in that bill, but I really think those childcare provisions help on a number of levels.
I want to try to ask you 2 quick questions about what I'm sure is your favorite subject, which is your House Republican colleagues. I don't know how much attention you were paying over the week off, but this episode between Congresswoman Boebert of California with these ridiculous Islamophobic comments. She was called out by Ilhan Omar, who she had targeted with them. She's since apologized. Do you take that apology as sincere, and what do you make of this ongoing situation we have seen with House Republicans coming up and saying these outlandish things time and time again, and the action that has to be taken then to rein things back in the House?
Sure. First of all, I don't think it was especially sincere. If you look at her actual words, it was one of those kind of, I had to say this and I don't mean it apologies. The reality is Republicans have to quit playing to an audience of one. They all want to have Donald Trump, their cult leader, happy with them, and they'll say and do almost anything to make him happy. Kevin McCarthy needs to be the minority leader, which means he has to be calling more of the shots, not just trying to get into the world records books for longest speeches. He needs to actually do what he needs to do, which is tell his members, look, you know, we're adults here. We can't treat our constituents constituents as insulting as Lauren Boebert just did with what she said. She insulted Muslims across the country, and it was insulting, especially to another member of Congress. But that's his job. So one, quit playing to Donald Trump, an audience of one. Two, Kevin McCarthy, do your job.
And quickly, I wonder if you think this is the same audience of one here. I want to ask you about Ronnie Jackson, who tweeted about the Omicron variant. Here comes the MEV, the midterm election variant. They need a reason to push nationwide mail-in ballots. Democrats will do anything to cheat during an election. We're not going to let them. I think I have a pretty flexible mind, but it's hard for me to get into a space where I could imagine how another COVID variant could possibly help congressional Democrats. Has the COVID response become too politicized in the House, at least, for there to be any more government action on COVID response?
Garrett, it's this bad. We know at least 65 Republicans supposedly haven't been vaccinated in Congress, right? Which is pretty amazing and stunning, given all the information we have on COVID. But I've also been told that our House physician doesn't release the data of who's gotten a vaccination. Not that we'd get names because there's HIPAA concerns, but they don't even release it to registries because there are some members who actually are getting vaccinated but don't want to admit to being vaccinated. How far more? You can't go much farther into crazy land than that, right? And again, this is appealing to what they think Donald Trump wants to hear. Look, the Republican Party has to once again be a political party, not this modern cult. And it's going to take more than Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney to get that done.
A very bizarre dynamic, that, on the vaccination and not wanting to talk about it if you are. Congressman Pocan, thank you. We got to leave it there.